As I'd sat by his bedside, clutching his lifeless hand, my heart had overflowed with sadness. The days and nights that followed seemed to roll into one. It was hard to keep my feelings in check. I was an emotional wreck, and every time I briefly left my husband's side, I broke down in tears. But the meltdowns were getting me nowhere, so they had to stop. I needed to be strong. Determination was something I usually had by the bucket load, so it was time to dig deep. My resolve seemed to have evaporated into thin air, but I had to stay positive and not allow myself to lose hope despite the hopeless situation. I couldn't give up on Nathan while he still had breath left in his body, but it was exhausting waiting for him to show signs of improvement. Nathan came through his brush with death against seemingly impossible odds and gradually started to wake up. When I broke the news to Alfie, he insisted that Nathan should move into Darkwood Manor while he recuperated from the car crash. You could have knocked me down with a feather. The cynic in me knew there was more to his gesture than generosity. He was bound to have an ulterior motive. Alfie always had a hidden agenda. The prospect of sharing a house with my husband and the man who had fathered my son made me uneasy. No matter how much I tried, I couldn't seem to shake the feeling that something bad was going to happen to us. Chapter 2. Alfie. As expected, Gemma had kept a bedside vigil while Nathan had been in the hospital. It must have been agonizing for her to watch him fight for his life, and I knew it wasn't charitable to kick a man when he was down. But every time someone kneed Nathan in the bollocks or he was dealt a cruel blow, it brought a huge smile to my face. I reasoned it was okay to be happy, as long as I kept that to myself and didn't say my thoughts out loud. I didn't want Gemma to know I was gloating about their tragic situation. I'd volunteered to look after Luca so Gemma could give Nathan her undivided attention. It was the gentlemanly thing to do, and proved the art of chivalry wasn't dead. Surprisingly, she seemed reluctant to take me up on my generous offer. But I was the baby's father, so I was the perfect stand-in, and she didn't really have a choice in the matter. If she wanted to stay by Nathan's side while he was hooked up to life-saving equipment, she'd have to hand over the parental responsibility to me. Naturally, I jumped at the chance to spend some quality time with my son. It would be a fantastic opportunity for me to show Gemma that I could step into the role and fill Nathan's shoes. He wasn't the only man who could change a nappy. I'd changed plenty in my time. When my nephews and nieces were babies, I'd helped my sisters out and mucked in with family life. As Mum was no longer alive, I tried to make Danny and Sam feel supported. I might be a man's man, but I didn't agree with old-fashioned chauvinism. My mum brought me up to respect women and never shy away from anything. So when the situation arose, I was only too pleased to be roped in. I'd been given the chance to score some brownie points with Gemma, so I wasn't about to waste it. I wanted to get into her good books by looking after our son and not use the opportunity to do anything underhand while she watched her husband slip away. I thought it was a very selfless thing for me to do under the circumstances. I didn't want to watch Gemma fawning over Nathan, but I'd have to grin and bear it for the time being. It was a trade-off. He was clinging onto life with a very fragile grip, so it would do her good to think I was prepared to show them some compassion in their hour of need. Even though Gemma was convinced I was behind Nathan's accident, I had nothing to do with it. He'd been driving too fast on a narrow country lane, and he'd lost control of the car on a bend. The Mondeo skidded off the road and flipped upside down. Simple as that. But I couldn't have planned things better if I'd orchestrated them myself. I'd mistakenly thought everything was starting to fall into place. The odds had been stacked against Nathan, so once he was dead, he'd be out of our lives for good. Trying to win over Gemma had been like flogging a dead horse, and I never thought the day would come that we'd be together. I'd been close to giving up on her. Dad could see I was getting bored of the chase and had encouraged me to persevere. Thankfully, I'd listened to his advice. Nathan had hovered close to death for weeks, but then disaster struck. Against all the odds, he came out of the coma and was back in the land of the living. What were the chances of that? The guy was like a cat with 9...